Good evening. I'm Crimson with Shine a Light in the Dark, and I am here with the wonderful and amazing and beautiful Miss Lexi Layne. And she has been so gracious to come on here tonight and give us a little bit of Moonlight. So go ahead and tell us kind of like what you're currently working on. I know that we just released in September, we just had a release come out not too long ago. What are we currently working on, and what's kind of going on our path right now?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Very happy to be here. So yeah, I released Serpent in September. That is going to be the first single off the new album that I'm working on right now. Um, Me and my producer, we've been working on this album since actually last December. And everything just like is really just coming out very organically, and it has a really strict theme to it. So I think once I drop this second single, which we're dropping in December,
Ooh,
I think people will start to catch on like what the theme is.
okay, awesome. If you don't mind me asking, so what was kind of like, so looking at the lyrics to Serpent, I absolutely dig it. I adore it. I love kind of the whole theme that you're talking about. What was kind of the inspiration behind that?
The inspiration was really just myself in the sense of I came to this point where I really ended a very toxic cycle with myself. It had nothing to do with an ex-boyfriend or a father figure. It had nothing to do with that. It was really just something eternally in me that I was really ready to shed skin on. And the concept of serpent has been on my mind for about a good like 2.5, 3 years now. And it wasn't really till I met Kevin McCombs, who's my producer, last December. And I showed him the idea, and I was like, this needs to be the first single we drop because I have to shed this before I become this new person, which again, the album will explain. So yeah, it just has to do with, shedding your old life and knowing that it's okay to start new, no matter what age you are. If you're 13, 25, or 66, like you can always start fresh and start new. So that's what Serpent's really about.
I absolutely adore that you said that it was about yourself, because I think that sometimes people don't even think about how important that is to end those cycles like within ourselves, because we repeat our own cycles, right? Like we have
Yeah.
our own trauma and our own toxicity and stuff that we start to repeat in ourselves. What would be some advice that you have for maybe listeners to kind of identify some of those and to really like stand on and help them shed kind of some of those past cycles that they may have been experiencing?
I think it comes down to like when somebody hits their own rock bottom, and only you, like meaning the general people, will know when they hit their own rock bottom. And for me, I really had to discard a lot of toxic patterns, a lot of karmic patterns, a lot of toxic people that were kind of just leeching on in my life that I just assumed because these people, were in my life for years, or because it was financially stable or whatever it may be, that it was okay. And I realized that it was actually slowly killing me mentally, and spiritually, most of all, inside. That I actually took 9 months of my life and I went to a spiritual healer. And it has nothing to do with religion. Like, I'm just a very spiritual person. And I did a lot of Reiki sessions and, cleansing my chakra sessions. And I really purged this old self from me. So now I am able to become, or I have been able to become the woman that I really want to be. So it just all starts with like when somebody's ready and there's help. You can get help anywhere, and that's the best thing. You just have to ask. And that's something that I didn't realize for a really long time is I just needed to ask for help. And I really just needed to look in the mirror and say, like, you and I, meaning like me and myself, we're going to do this and we're going to change your life. And I did for the better.
No, I love how you were talking about too, like even looking in the mirror, right? And like that it's not even a religious thing at some points, right? Like it's this spiritual, just like of our soul and like what's calling. Like I remember, I'll never forget when I was doing a lot of my inner child healing and stuff from my
Mm.
own traumatic past. I was looking in the mirror and I was like, you know what? Oh girl, I'm so sorry. It took me 33 years to realize that you were worth something, you
Yeah.
know? And I was like, I always wanted somebody to fight for me and like save me from like all the things that I was going through, but I didn't even fight for me. I didn't
Yeah.
even see my worth. It was bad enough that I let the world tell me these things, and then I started the worst part is that we start to believe them. And I
Hmm.
love how you mentioned, though, that it's just like that energy healing within inside of ourselves, like, right? Like realigning our chakra system and not even realizing the disalignment that's happened. And even realizing that sometimes the people in our lives that used to be really good investments have become really good bills.
Yeah, a hundred
You know?
percent. It's crazy how like a toxic pattern can almost become normalcy, and you
Yeah.
don't realize it until it's actually like the biggest burden in your life. And that's what kind of hit me, where I was like, I am not going to get where I know I'm supposed to be until I get rid of all of this toxic stuff in my life.
Yeah. And it's so true, right? Because, like, if it is your brand of normal because it's always been happening, it's so hard to spot the cycle that keeps us down and to where we can't, like, mature and grow into ourselves and, like, stand into our own authenticity. One of the things
Yeah.
I love about, like, watching you and just everything is that I feel like you just have this beautiful feminine embracing and just, like, this beautiful, you know, I am who I am, and that's very inspiring to me. What really helps you stand on your authenticity? Number one. And number two, kind of come out and even talk about those things. And what advice would you have for others?
I think it's like an eternal thing where I love being open with people. I love to talk about like past trauma and, stuff that I went through as a child. And a lot of my album will kind of like release that in time. Um, I think the best thing that somebody can do is just be themselves. Because if you think about it, like we don't know how to be anybody else but ourselves. So we might as well just put all of that love like into ourselves and be the best version that we can possibly be. And I really believe when we do that is when other things like magnetize towards us in a positive light, in a positive way. So I don't know how to be anything but this person that I have been the past couple years. Not saying that I wasn't always strong and very aggressive in getting what I want. I've always been that kind of person. And I think my childhood kind of molded me to be like, if you want something, you have to do it yourself. No one's going to hand it to you. Um, so sometimes I turn to those traumatic experiences and thank them in a way, because I don't think I would be who I am today if I didn't go through what I went through. So again, I think it has to do with that whole looking in the mirror first. Like somebody has to know their worth. Somebody's not going to know that you're worthy until you know you're worthy. It's just common sense. And it's so simple, but it's so true.
And I think it's one of those things that we overlook all the time, right? Because, like, you know, they say that a person can only meet you as far as you've met yourself, or vice
Hmm.
versa, right? And so if they haven't really met themselves, they don't even realize your worth either. And
Yeah.
then constantly, from the moment we meet somebody, we're teaching them how it's okay to treat us and how you should be treating us. And if we don't see any worth in ourselves, then our standard of how we allow people to treat us sometimes can be a lot lower. And
Yeah,
I love
I agree.
and I love how you even mentioned too, like being yourself, right? Like, because sometimes I feel like that can be one of those harder things because the world sometimes has so many opinions on who we should be, how we should be. What was kind of your way to see through the lies that the world was trying to make you believe about yourself?
Say that one more time. I'm like trying to digest that.
Like a lot, like as we're growing up, the world tells us, oh, well, you shouldn't cry that much, or you shouldn't do this, or you
Mhm.
can't be this, or this is beauty and this isn't beauty. And so the world kind of feeds us all these lies about who we should be, who our masked version of ourselves should be. How
Yeah.
did you really go inside internally and realize the lies that number one, the world was telling you, and number two, really stand up against those within yourself?
I think for me, like, sometimes in life I believe that there are followers and there are leaders. And it's not bad or good. It's just what somebody is, right? I feel for me personally, I've always been a leader. Um, so I don't know how to steer, anybody else's life the way that I would steer mine. And I think it's an intuition thing too and a feeling thing. Like I always go by this silly saying, and I've said it to so many of my friends, and they're like, wow, that's so simple, but it's so effective. I always say, like, if it doesn't feel good, I'm not doing it. I don't care what it is. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't resonate with me, then I'm not doing it. And I think that's a way of answering your question is if it feels tense or tight or negative, I just don't do it. So I kind of block out all the noise. I think especially like it's 2023 about to be 2024, social media has taken over so much and had such an impact on my generation and the younger generation that it's scary. Everybody's trying to like one up everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I always just try to remember and remind myself that I don't have to one up anybody, nor do I want to. Like when my time comes, it will come.
I think that that's so beautiful though, because it's true, right? Like, I think that we put ourselves in competitions when we really should be embracing each other and like realizing the similarities between us and like how we can really help each other. And I love how your friends like even said that was simple, but it's
Yeah.
like, so like it is simple, right? Like in theory, like it sounds so simple, but it's also so hard to do, to really stand in your own intuition and be like, especially when everybody's like, oh yeah, no, let's do this, and you're like, that doesn't feel right to me.
Hmm.
What really helped you stand in those moments and really stay and hone in true to self?
Again, I think like my path, like I know where I'm heading, like I know what I'm destined for, and that may sound crazy to some people or listeners, but like it's just what I know in my heart. So for me, I feel like I'm on this mission with myself to get
Yeah.
where I need to be, and kind of like a horse, like I don't even look to the right or the left. I go straight forward, and I'm just so immersed and focused on myself, and not in like a narcissistic way by any means. It's just I know what I want for me. I know what I'm worthy of, and I'm not going to stop until I get there.
If you don't mind me asking, what is that kind of what is your mission? Where are you really aiming for, and what are you really hoping for?
My mission is my career. It's been my career since I was 12 years old. I've had the same dream. I want my music out in the universe and in Europe and America and everywhere, and I want people to resonate and really feel something when they listen to my music. It has nothing to do with money, it has nothing to do with numbers or likes on a picture or a video. For me, it's never been that. It's just I want to touch people, like not physically, obviously, like spiritually. Just
Yeah.
want to, refrain that. For example, perfect example, like when you messaged me and you said, "Oh my God, can we do a podcast? Like you've been such an inspiration. Like I love your music." Seeing that makes me feel that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm helping people, or just even if it's just women that listen to my music. Like I'm helping somebody, and knowing that like I could make somebody's day has made my day. That's my mission.
I love that though, because like it's so pure, and it's almost like how I always say, kind of like, especially since I see that you are writing a lot about your past and like kind of how that's like how you're shedding that skin of your old self, and kind of because we don't realize like that old us and the new us can't survive in the same timeline, so one of us has to be shed, right? Because the other
Mhm.
one will keep trying to pull us back into that old version of self. And
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful that you've been speaking about that. And like it's almost like those phoenix moments, right? Like you're
Mhm.
having your beautiful phoenix moments, and then you're letting everybody else see the phoenix moments and write about it. What
Yeah.
inspired you to get into music? You said since you were like 12. So where was your inspiration, and what brought you this way?
So I started out in musical theater. Bring the mic to me. I started out in musical theater around like 5, 6-ish. And I don't know, I just like always said from a young age, like being on the stage is my home. Like having that one spotlight on me, like I just loved it. And I performed on an actual like theater stage, like professional Broadway shows would come through. And it was amazing. And I felt at home. And after that, I did that from like 6 to 19. But when I was about 14, I was like, you know what? I want to start writing my own music. Like, I have a lot to say. And I kind of just started writing when I was like 11, 11 and a half. And that slowly, like, just kind of transpired into me working with, like, a producer at the time in Florida, because that's where I'm from originally. And I just fell in love with being able to express myself the way that I want to. My music's definitely heavier now, and this is kind of where I've always wanted to end up with this genre of music. Where when I was younger, it was a little bit more like pop rock kind of deal.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's just always been my thing. I just have always loved it.
I like to say that music is almost like another entity, right? Like it's almost like a whole other person. It doesn't care about anything. It doesn't care who you are, where you're from, if you're rich or if you're poor. It just wants to love you like in those moments. And as an artist, right? Like I feel like when y'all are writing your lyrics, y'all do a beautiful, especially you, I love, especially with Serpent, you did a beautiful job of painting a world for people to go join you in, to feel seen, safe, and heard in that.
Thank
How
you.
did you go about making that world?
I think it's a mixture of like I think it comes from being real first. Like there is no fakeness in my music. Like I don't write about experiences that I haven't been through or things that I don't really know of. Like it's all personal experiences that I've been through, throughout my life. So I think it's really like setting the scene. It's so many different puzzle pieces coming together. It's the topic of the song, it's the emotion of the music, it's how I sing and how I approach the melody. There's been times where I've been in the studio with Kevin and we'll redo something, like 50 times just because like if the emotion is not there, it's not going to come out right. And then visually everything has to fit. So I have my team, of people who do my music videos and my single art and everything, and it all starts in here. Like it's just a vision that I see where it's like I hear it like this, I see it like this, and then we kind of just squish everything together and then it finally just comes to life.
With your process, do you already kind of know what you want to start writing about, like before you go to start writing, or does that just kind of come to you? Or how does
Yeah.
that inspiration happen?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think there's ever been a time that I've walked in any studio and I'm like, all right, we're gonna write a song. What are we doing? Like, no, I'm such a planner. For example, with Serpent, Serpent was something that I knew I needed to do, and that was kind of in the works for like 2.5, 3 years. And I gave my producer the idea and told him how I feel, how I want it to sound, and we just ripped it apart and we created this world of you actually like when I listen to Serpent personally, like I fall into that song. Like I can feel what I'm going through. And I've had quite a few listeners tell me that like we can feel your emotion in the song. And that's what we're creating is the whole album. I don't want it to just be a song. I want it to be a work of art. I want people to feel like they're opening a book and they're hopping into the story, almost like an Alice in Wonderland kind of feel. Like that
Yeah.
is the feeling I want people to feel, that they feel so immersed in the music that when they're done listening to it, they're like, whoa, like I kind of feel like I went in a trance for like 40 minutes.
Yeah. And so I kind of have a question about that because, like, you're talking about like feeling the emotion in the song. Because I feel like two emotions in your song Serpent. One of them is like this empowering, right? Like stepping into this new chapter, but also even a little bit of grief and sadness of having to shed the skin in the
Yeah.
first place. What would you say? Is that kind of accurate, or would you describe that better? Or
Yeah, it's 100% accurate. It's almost like a part of you is dying. It's hard to let go of things that we are so used to for so many years. And I also say that's like why not everybody does it, because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
yeah,
And everybody would be on a higher vibration, but that's not how the universe or the world works today. So of course there was a massive part of recording that where I did feel grief and sadness of I'm letting go of this big chunk of me, that this person that I've been for so many years that I'm not anymore. And I know it's time to go. And then when the chorus breaks out, it's kind of like this anger where it's like, yeah, I've been living with the venom in my veins, but like here I am, I'm shedding the skin, screw it, I'm starting over.
and I love how you mentioned though that if it was the easier path, everybody would do. Because I always hear people like, "Oh, that's the healing path," and I don't think they sometimes take into consideration just how hard that really means that because it's so much easier for me just to suppress my emotions and not deal with it and just kind of fall back into a cycle that's been, for the most part, killing us because it's karmic, right? But at the
Mhm.
same token, it's the comfort, it's the one
Yeah.
right? And so and there's something comforting about it being what you know. But it's so much harder to break free from those cycles and step into, like you said, and raise your vibration.
Yeah. I also have this saying where it's like, if I'm scared of it, I'm doing it. And that was also another part of Serpent. I wrote on my Instagram that, people that really know me, my biggest fear my entire life has been snakes. I don't know why, but they've always had a lot of spiritual meaning to me. So it was kind of this like light and dark kind of thing that I always tried to figure out. And when we were, designing up the music video, I told my producer and my director, Ryan Valdez at the time, I was like, I have to use a snake. Like, I am going to conquer my fear. This is going to be a whole rebirth for Lexi, and I'm going to use a snake. And I did, and I used one of my good friend's snakes, and I was fine. And God, was that so exhilarating! Like knowing that I can be like this close to a snake, and I'm fine now. Like that would have never happened, even like 4 years ago, ever.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. And I love how it was just like, you were like, you know what, I'm afraid of this. Because I feel like a lot of times, like, what we're afraid of is really like where we're being pulled to kind of challenge ourselves within reason, of course, guys,
Yeah,
but
don't jump off a bridge.
exactly within reason. But, I feel like it's almost like it's pulling at us to challenge ourselves because there's generally a deep seated reason that we're afraid of it. And I also liked how you were mentioning like the dark and light aspects because I think sometimes, the darkness gets looked at so poorly, but it's so important to have both
Yeah.
kind of that mixture of the good and the bad within us to allow it to flow kind of equally like yin and yang because they can't exist without the other.
I was just gonna say, like, light cannot exist without dark and vice versa. So it's like you might as well just I don't even think it's like good or bad. It's just like energy. It's energy and it's all how you look at it. And that's what people like don't realize. Like it can be so simple if you just I think learn how to flow with the energy and not go against it. I think better things come from that.
Yeah. And like what you were saying, right? There's no good or bad. It's what we assign it, right?
Correct.
Whatever we've assigned in our heart, like, oh, well, this means bad or this means good. And sometimes we don't even realize that by assigning those things, like we've almost planted venom in our brains ourselves.
Yeah.
Because it really doesn't have to be bad. Like you said, it's just that energetic process that you just kind of flow with. How did you really start learning where your flow was and how to move along with it?
I feel like it's something that's always been really embedded in me. Like I grew up very spiritual. My mom was very spiritual. I just feel like it's something I suppressed for a really long time. And I don't think I really realized it until I started doing that whole look in the mirror, shed the skin, let go of the old toxic pattern, that I realized that life can be so easy and so beautiful. It's really just how you look at it, you know?
When you were throughout this entire process, what's something that you learned that you wish you had have known sooner?
To really just like trust my intuition and realize that it's okay to let go. That is the biggest thing is I held on to so much child trauma and events and people and trying to get people to come back to me that I knew were not right for me. When I realized that I just let go and just kind of let everything flow, that is when it clicked for me.
I love how you're talking about like really like how you held on to those kinds of things. What did you do personally like to work on releasing some of those past patterns or releasing some of those cycles or even people?
Again, I really started looking at myself in the mirror and saying, okay, who do you want to be? Do you want to continue to be this person that's not toxic? Because I never really felt I was toxic. I just felt I was a magnet for toxic men, toxic people, toxic patterns. Um, and I told myself, like, you have a choice. You either continue like this or you make the biggest change of your life. And I started meditating a lot and just like really spending time with myself, like quality time. And I don't mean quality time like laying in bed and watching TV. No. quality time where, like, and I still do it and I have no shame, like I sit on the floor every night and meditate and stare at myself in the mirror. And sometimes I will talk to myself because no one's going to console me the way I'm going to console myself. And it honestly, like, even saying it, it sounds so crazy, but it has helped me really understand myself. Like, think about it, like you have a conversation with a friend, right? Like,
Mhm.
you get to know that friend by having quality time and having a real conversation with them. I'm doing the same thing just with myself. And I think that's what people don't realize is like you're supposed to know who you are. And you can only do that by really making quality time and immersing yourself in yourself and understanding who you are, what it is you want, what are you trying to accomplish, who's not good for you, et cetera, et cetera. So that for me was the biggest thing, was just taking time. It's time and understanding, myself.
I don't think that that's crazy at all because I've like when I was going on my own like self searching and relearning about self, we don't realize how much we stay submersed in everybody else's world, but not our own.
Yeah.
And we learn about everybody else, but we don't learn about ourselves. And, those conversations with self actually help awaken us to parts of ourselves that we didn't even know we had in us and even patterns. And, you know, we send so much love to everyone else, but we don't ever give that back to ourselves. And I think that that's beautiful because you're
Yeah.
giving that love and that compassion and that comfort that you were giving to people who were more bills, right? Sometimes it weren't always good for us, right? You give you give them all that love and energy and compassion, and then it leaves you with none for yourself. And so it sounds like you've
Yeah.
really been giving it back to yourself.
Oh, 100%. Like, there's nights where like I sit and I'm like, I call back all my power to me. Like any love or light that I've given people that not don't deserve it, because those are the people you should give it to, but like where it's not doing anything anymore, where I can call it back to myself, I do. And that's kind of a lot of what like the second single is. Personally, I think you're gonna like the second single more than the first. I just have this feeling. Um,
I did.
Not that I want to touch on that too much, but it is a very woman empowerment song, the second single. Like that song is strictly for the women, 100%.
Because that song comes out, you said, in
December.
December.
Early December, yes. I just don't
Early.
want to say it yet, but early December, yes.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say we might be good because you might. I don't know if this should be released right at the beginning of December, so I don't know where you are
Okay, well,
timeline on that.
single is dropping December 9th.
Okay. I'm so I didn't know that I really needed to know about this, and now I'm like,
Yeah.
no. Um,
Yeah.
what, so throughout your healing process and through everything that you've been doing for yourself, and then really, like, it sounds like you've really been returning your energy to you and
Mhm.
focusing on you. What is the biggest improvement that you've seen in your life, and really, how do you feel like that's changed both you and your music?
I feel like it has raised my confidence, it's raised my vibration, and it really makes me 1,000,000,000% sure of who I am. And I don't care whoever walks up to me and offers me something. If it doesn't feel good, I'm not doing it. Like, if I don't want to do something, I'm not doing it. I think it's just, again, it's really opened up the doors and the light to realize like you are this person and you've worked really hard to get here. And that's like amazing because not everybody does do that. And everybody should do that because it really makes life so amazing and easy. Um, but I feel like I've passed all my tests, if that makes sense, like from the universe.
What was your hardest challenge going through all of this that you came up against, and how did you overcome it?
I think my hardest challenge was really ending my relationship with my father. Which in the album there is a song that is about that. Um, it's really hard, I think, to let go of family members because they're your family, right? Especially like your mother or your father. They helped give you life. But there's also another side of when something is not good for you and it's actually bleeding out venom into you. that you have to cut it off. And that was a cycle that I toggled with for, I want to say, like a good, 28, 29 years, back and forth and back and forth. And I got to this point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is not a father. This isn't somebody that supports me, that values me and makes me a priority. It's become a thing where it's only convenient for him, and I'm not a convenience. I should be a priority, especially being an only child for, my mom and my dad. So that was the biggest thing, but and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard, but I know in my heart that I did the right thing, because part of it is I'm really grateful to him in ways, because, going through what I went through with him as a child, it's made me the woman I am today. But then parts of me, I think about, like, oh wow, like I don't have a father figure in my life, and I never really have. Um so that's been the biggest struggle, but again, the outcome of it is who I've become, and that life, the clouds kind of cleared once I really cut that line with my father. My mother, on the other hand, is amazing. She's my best friend. We talk like 7 times a day. I love her. She's everything. Yes. So I'm grateful that my mom is amazing. So if you have one good parent, it's good.
You know, and it's so hard because I understand completely what you mean, but like when it's family, it can be so hard to choose yourself, but just because they're family doesn't mean they're not human, and that doesn't mean that sometimes that human isn't in a space that's giving any contribution to your life that could be positive at times. And so it becomes so important to choose yourself. How did you really, like within self, because it was difficult for you to do, what was really kind of what you stood on to help you make that decision and even to go through with it?
Again, it didn't feel good. That it's like I use my feel good, like, what is it, like thermometer or metrodome, or I don't know what it is, whatever. If it doesn't feel good, I don't do it. And that was the thing, is I always had anxiety speaking to him on the phone. If we ever met up, it was very anxiety filled. It was very, like, there was always a time limit, or, it didn't feel like how it should feel with a father. And again, it took me years to realize, because again, a toxic pattern, and I always assume, oh, well, this is my dad, so this is okay, right? But it wasn't okay. And when I started to realize that it was actually hindering me and was really taking a negative toll on me with work and my life and my music, um, I realized that it's just a massive toxic pattern that is stemmed onto other toxic patterns. It was like the main tree, and then the other toxic branches grew off it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's when I realized that I can't do this anymore. And sometimes it's sad, and sometimes I do question myself, or I did question myself, did I do the right thing? Am I selfish, and am I a bad child? But I realized, no, I'm not. It's, you don't get to be in my life anymore because you don't deserve it, because you weren't there for me when I needed you. So why should you be in my life when I'm celebrating so many things? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, and so like I heard you talk about like how you're like look your like thermometer or will go off, right? Like if it doesn't
Yeah.
feel good about doing it. How do you think that you started realizing, so cuz like with dad, right? Like dad's kind of one of those ones that you're like, "Oh, well, he's my dad. It should just, this is just how it's always felt." How do you think he got kind of around your radar for so long, and what finally made you realize that he was getting around your radar?
Um I mean, we've had a rocky start, like, since I was born. Um so I think him getting around my radar for so many years was, it's my dad, or it's, oh, I'll spend 30 minutes with you and, buy you dinner, and, that kind of thing. I feel like I was almost more so bribed as a child from him, where the love wasn't really real. And that's sad, because no child, especially like a female, that, like, should have to go through that. I don't think that's correct by any means. Again, it wasn't all bad, but the majority of it was not, and it was unsettling to the point where I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, you're here today, tomorrow you're not. You're yelling at me, you're saying inappropriate things. I mean, it didn't feel right, and then that's when I realized I have to cut it off. And my mom agreed with me too. My parents are divorced, so she's like, I get it. You do what you need to do for you. You're a young adult.
I just want to say though that I'm so happy that you did choose yourself and choose, because one of the hardest things in the world to do is to choose our own peace and to realize when people, especially those that they almost have like a free pass because they're so high up in the family chain to steal your peace from you. I think that that's so beautiful though that you chose yourself and you did choose to have your own peace. And I even hear you realizing like you're like, I don't deserve to be an option. I don't deserve the ways that this was making me feel or even impact my life, especially with how and where you're going. And I think that that really speaks to that beauty and that strength in you and just
Thank you.
how much, like, because that's so powerful. And it speaks to women everywhere, right? That are going through the same things. And that, because like you said, especially with dad, right? Like, that's that first, like, idea relationship that we have in our head, how these interactions are going and things. And it almost teaches us that certain things are okay when they're not really okay. And then we
Correct.
repeat them,
Yeah.
you know?
That's kind of like the whole when I did the whole analogy of like the tree and then things spiraling off. I was noticing that everybody that I was dating, throughout obviously my life, was just another version of him. And just toxic, 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 the list goes on kind of deal. And I think that's what really made me realize too was I'm like, this is actually hindering my dating life because I don't know anything else like but him in a way. Because again, like you said, daddy's little girl, it's your father, you want to marry a guy like your dad. Absolutely not. But I didn't
Yeah.
realize that until after a while ago where what I was actually dating was not positive for me. It was actually a really negative effect.
And I heard you mention earlier that you were like, I just felt like I kept drawing in these relationships, like the same kind of pattern over and over again. And it kind of goes into that theory of like mirrored souls, right? Like
Mhm.
that we're constantly bringing in those mirrors to reflect the unhealed parts of us that we need to heal so that we can stop pulling in those cycles. Do you
Yeah.
feel like I heard you mention too, like, do you feel like now that you're on the other side, because you said that you were pulling in and magnetizing different things to you now. What is that process? What is the beauty from the ashes been kind of looking like on this side?
It's stunning. It really is so beautiful how like when you kind of just let go and let things happen and again you're secure in yourself, you put out what you want and seeing things that I've been manifesting or magnetizing towards me for the past 2 years come true, like come to fruition. It's insane. It's like the whole law of attraction thing. It really does work. It really does. But the thing is, like, you have to believe it. And it just keeps going back to the like, you have to believe in yourself. You have to know that you're worthy, that what you want, you can receive. If you don't believe it, it's never going to happen. So you might as well just stop trying it, until you really believe that it can happen.
And that's one of the things that they talk about sometimes with children who have experienced certain types of trauma is that they have this endurance about them that is willing to go above and beyond sometimes what natural law or even limitations say. Almost like,
Mhm.
okay, I hear you saying that I can't do this. I hear you, but I've got so much faith in myself. Like I'm putting all the money on me. And so you
Yeah.
really took a chance on yourself. Which is awesome because so many times we don't realize we show up for everybody else but ourselves. And so it sounds like, like what I'm hearing is that you were like, you know what, I'm showing up for me. What was your kind of coolest manifestation that you had that came in? That you were like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm doing it. This was my like I've been working on this manifestation for a long time, putting in the work." And was like, "Yes."
I've had I've had a lot like happen and things come true, but I think the two that stand out the most to me is what happened last year. I think it was like July, and I was like, I don't care what I have to do. I am playing a show this year, meaning last year. And it's gonna be at like a higher end concert hall or venue. It's gonna happen. And I I went so hard with just like pressing and pressing. And yeah, and then I played my first show at the Viper Room last year. And to have that as my first show, that was like amazing. The other thing was is want to say like it was like the beginning of last year. It was like February. I was looking for a new producer to work with. And I kept saying, like, I want to work on an album. I want to work with somebody that really understands me as a woman and understands my craft and can honor that the way that I'll honor them as far as making music for me.
Yeah.
And then I met Kevin last December at my Viper Room show, which is so
Right.
funny. Yeah. So, and here we are now. You know, I have another show booked at the Whiskey on April 5th for 2024, and another single and the album, and there's a lot of stuff in the works. So I'm very, very grateful is what it is, and very excited just to kind of share everything with everyone finally.
No, that's amazing. And it sounds like you've got a really good team that you feel like it sounds like that you work really well with now. What has kind of been the process difference between like bringing them on board and like how has that changed your process versus like previously?
My team is amazing, from my producer to my director to my photographer. I mean, and the best thing for me, I think, is like they're all friends of mine. Like we all have real relationships where we're honest with each other, and you know, they listen to me. I think they listen to me in the sense of like if I have an idea, they digest it and they're like, "Okay, we can do this. We'll figure it out." And that's I think that's always what we all say is like, "We'll figure it out." And we do. We do. And it's just taking time with one another and listening and understanding and honoring that this is my vision. This all comes from me, especially like the visuals and stuff. Like when me and Kevin are kind of working on a song, I already see music video. I already see photo shoot. I can see it in my head. It's just putting it on paper and making it come to life. And that's just something else that I'm so grateful for is my team is just hands-on, amazing, and really is invested in the project as much as I am. And sometimes I think that's hard to find. Somebody that's really genuine, that believes in you, believes in your craft, and wants to help it come to fruition. And I got very, very lucky with all the people that I work with, and they're just all incredibly talented.
No, I totally think you're right because like not only that, but it also sounds like they're really honoring what your pure vision is instead of trying to change. It doesn't sound like they're trying to change your vision in any way, right? The more they're like, oh, well, let me digest this and see how we can make your pure, real vision come to life, which is really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, if anything, no one that's the best thing is like no one's trying to change me. Everyone's like, okay, there's no changing Lexi. She is who she is, which is very true. So if anything, it really is just like a partnership where we all just really work together to, bring it to life. And, if I have an idea, but somebody's is a little bit better than mine or it would fit better, I'm like, hell yeah, let's go for it. Let's do
Yeah.
it. So it's really nice.
What would you say, like with all the processes, right, between like working with everybody, writing music, playing live shows, talking with people, creating your lyrics, singing, what is the most cathartic part of the entire process for you?
Oh God, that's so hard. But if we're talking about like strictly cathartic, being on stage.
Okay.
I never know what I'm gonna do on stage. There's been times that I'm, in a back bend or I'm on the floor or, like I mean, I've done some crazy shit so far. Because it's a feeling and I go off pure emotion. Um, and there's something about being on stage and performing live for people that are coming to see me or even new people that are like, "Oh wow, like you're sick, you're great." Like I love like showcasing who I am. And I think that's something I've always like loved since I was younger. But being able to sing my own music on stage, like that is so healing, as well as being in the studio and recording. Um, because I feel like it's kind of like two-sided. Like being on stage is more, loud and open, whereas being in the studio, it's just Kevin and I can really be vulnerable laying those lyrics down. And, there's been times that I have cried and, screamed and, but like that helps get the song out. And that's a healing process for me.
Yeah. And I love how you're talking about like on stage and the energy, like getting lost in that energy that you're sharing together, like with the crowd, right? Like y'all are giving that equal kind of energy and feeding each other in that way, kind of, right? With your
Yeah,
vibe.
100%. Yeah.
And then like I also like how you're talking though about like in the studio, how it's just the two of y'all and you get to cry it out or scream it out or do whatever you need to do to really get, because they always say that the only way out is through when it comes to emotions. Like you, otherwise it's like a brand in the body, it just stays there until it's actually fully expressed and able to leave. And with your lyrics being so raw and so real and so close to home for you, how do you keep yourself at an okay state? And does it still affect you as much on stage later? And how do you kind of like re-get yourself back into your good state of mind?
Um, I think the way that I approach that, like, for example, there's a song called Bloodless on my first EP, Sinner and Saint, that I released in 2020. And that song I wrote in 30 minutes, lyrically and melody on my bathroom floor, hysterical crying. Song was written about an ex who was a heroin addict that I could not pull myself away from. I swear we were twin flames. That's just what I always swear by. Um, so I remember the first time that we had rehearsal, and that song was the last song in the set, and my drummer looked at me and he's like, "Be okay." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be fine." And I think it's like working through it. It's like going to therapy. Like you have to talk it out, you have to sing it out, and doing that a couple times and then realizing like this song helped me at the time when I needed it. Now I'm giving it to the world so that it can help somebody else because I don't feel like that anymore. Yes, of course, it takes me back to that time. And I believe that's what music is. They're placeholders, they're little clouds of memories that we can always tap into whenever we want, which I think is such a beautiful thing. But since that, meaning didn't resonate with me at the moment anymore, I feel like I was actually able to kind of portray it a little bit more in the sense of I'm not giving it to myself, I'm giving it to you guys now to feel how you want with it.
I think that that's beautiful though, because it's almost like you allow yourself to just actually really feel it all and allow yourself to come back home to yourself, right? And one of
Yeah.
those things about this the twin flame journey too, right? Like that's like a whole karmic cycle in its own, like that really just keeps continuously like hitting us with the same kind of cycles and patterns. So again, I don't think I can say enough how awesome that is that you really turned everything so inwards and just like went so strong force and so just for you and chose yourself and showed up for you. And you know I guess I can't even say enough like how beautiful I really think that that is, if
Thank
that makes
you.
sense.
Well, again, but like the reaction you're having is the reaction I want my listeners to have. I, I I don't think of like my shows as like, okay, I'm gonna get on stage and I'm gonna perform. For me, it's an experience. It's I think a lot of it is like I tap into like my theater days where it's like, all right, you got one chance, this is your character, this is who you're playing. You gotta make them believe it. Except in this case is my character is myself and I'm playing myself. So it's just really getting me across to the audience so that they can understand why I am the way I am, why I perform the way I do, and why I write these songs the way that I do. It's for me to heal and then for people to take them and maybe have their own healing journey from them.
And that's what's so beautiful about it too, is right, like I always joke around and I say as a counselor, I can hit one person per time. I'm limited by time and space, right? I get 1 hour per person, they have to be here. But as a musician, right, like you've had a 3 a.m. therapy session with somebody that you've never met,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't even know, you don't even know who they are, but they are acutely aware of who you are. and your music and like the resonance that's happening like in their soul, you know? And I think that that's so awesome. What were some artists like for you that were like, if you're looking back through your life, what were some artists that really resonated with your soul to help you through some dark times?
Ooh. The one that's standing out to me the most is there's a band called Paris, except it's spelled Pvris.
Okay.
Um, I their music is stunning, and I feel like their older music I resonated with a lot, where the music you can feel it, and the lyrics are just so stunningly written, and it takes you in. Um, they were definitely a really big one. Um, ooh, I, every time I'm on the spot with like artist asks, I like freeze because I'm like, oh my god, there's so many.
That's
Um, you know, that's definitely the one that's popping in my mind the most. Is I feel like at the time when I was younger, like a lot of things I went through, I would always listen to them because I just resonated with it. And that's the beautiful thing, like you said, like somebody's resonating with you that you don't even know who they are, but they could be having that 3 a.m. cry session to your song, and that's what they needed. You know, like that's mind blowing. You know,
exactly. And I've got to check them out. So
they're fantastic. Their first and second and third album. Maybe their third. First and second and third album are my favorite.
what would be if I okay, so if I was going to listen to the first song, what would be the first song that you would tell me this is the one you need to listen to first?
The first song I fell in love with them was called My House, and that's actually the song that got them really big as well. But it's about like it's my house, like it's time to get out. Like this is my energy, this is my time. Like you need to get the hell out of my house. That's kind of the premise of it. Um, that and then there's a song called Eyelids. That
I like
is that is probably the most that song gets me so emotional, and I am not like an emotional like crier person, but it is such a beautiful it almost just feels like this girl is just in a dark room alone, and she's just like trying to navigate these feelings, and it's just stunning. You have to listen to it and let me know what you think.
yes, that is my that's the homework I've given myself for tonight. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to check them both out. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, of
And I do
course.
want to honor your time. Um, so before we go, I believe that you can tell a lot about a person by what their current repeat song is. What is your current repeat song right now?
Oh, yes. Duh. So Spirit Box just dropped a new EP, and there's a song called Ultraviolet,
Oh,
and it's beautiful, and it's so easy to resonate with. It's like she's just like flowing in these colors of life and sound and music, and the video, it just works with the song so well. So that, and also Too Close Too Late, which is another song on their new EP that just dropped. um I really like love, I'm looking for a better word, I really resonate with that EP. It's like a big storybook, so I feel like it kind of like falls on the line of where like I'm trying to do with like my album in a way. It just sequences so beautifully together, that whole EP right now.
that's awesome. I haven't heard the second song, but I have heard Ultraviolet.
Okay, it's
I love,
beautiful. It's
yes,
stunning.
love. I haven't heard the second one though, so I'm gonna have to listen to that one too. But no, like Spirit Box is amazing in general, and like God, her voice is just so beautiful. Um,
Yeah,
and she pulls you in like with that emotion, like every time. You know, I think it's and you've kind of touched on it a couple of times too. I think that you can always tell when the emotion's like real and pure. Like that emotion just seems like woof, woof you
yeah,
right in, and you're like, it's like, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel it, I feel it.
yeah. You can also just tell like they really take the time with their music, and you can tell they're really trying to get a message across. And I think that's what is so magnetizing towards their music for me is it's real, it's
Yeah.
authentic, it's organic. And she does such an incredible job of pulling, I think, a listener in where you kind of just want more. And yeah, they're very big influences of mine, 100%.
Awesome. That's an amazing influence, though, and I can definitely feel that with the way that you pull in your audience as well. I love the way that you do that, and again, I just wanted to, before you go, I just want to take the time to tell you thank you. I really appreciate you coming on here. It has been amazing talking with you.
Thank you. I love doing this, and I love that we really hit on like love and light, and this was very cathartic, to be honest. So I thank you for giving me the outlet to kind of speak about topics that I haven't even really touched about yet with somebody. So I appreciate it.
Oh, yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And is there anything else that you want to let everyone know before we go?
Look out for my new single. If this is, I don't know if this will be out yet or not. And to follow all of my links, if you go to my Instagram, it's Lexi_Layne, and all of my links are on that page.
Awesome. And guys, too, also down in the description box, I'll make sure I have all of her links so that y'all please go check her out. Send her lots of love, lots of light. Follow her and just share her amazing presence with the world, guys. I love y'all and y'all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.